friends! Do you enjoy a melee character that's rather tanky and has an active playstyle? Maybe you even want an Allrounder where you can simply swap your main skill gem. Something that doesn't need much investment to get started? I got you covered with this Bladestorm Impale Fortified Champion. So why play? As already mentioned, you don't need much gear to get started and you can do all the content with some exalteds of investment. This character might not be as tanky as a max block build, but if you pay attention to your positioning, you will barely die. Due to the tankiness and little gear requirements until high endgame, recommended for hardcore as well as softcore players. Soul Self-Found has its limits as you want to take advantage of some hard to obtain uniques and a crit explodey chest later on. Due to the Impale mechanic, you can simply swap main skills. This build is tested and recommended either as Bladestorm or Cyclone. Maybe you even want to try another melee sword skill? Bosses die rather quickly no matter the mods of the area. Leap slam into a group of monsters and let your storm do the rest while jumping already to the next pack. Bladestorm is a great skill and the build balances active playstyle without the need to press too many buttons constantly. The only downsides of this build are that you can't run physical reflect maps and Bladestorm can feel a bit slacking if you are doing very mobile highest endgame boss fights like Uber Elder and Cyrus Awakening level 8. Simply switch to Cyclone if you don't wanna watch these bosses jump out of your bloodstorms constantly. Every character should have multiple layers of defense in Path of Exile to not die all the time, so how does this build get tanky? We use the Flash and Stone aura and switch between the two stances depending on the situation. Blind is a debuff that lessens the chance to hit of the affected target by 50%. Not getting hit is still the best way to avoid death in Path of Exile. Maim is a debuff that applies 30% reduced movement speed on the affected target, which makes it easier to kite monsters and again not get hit. Fortify is a buff that grants the player 20% less damage taken from hits, and we have it up all the time as it is part of our main skill gem setup. On top of that, we have increased Fortify effectiveness that makes us take 29% less damage instead of the default 20% from all hits, and we can't get stunned either. Any damaging elemental ailments such as Ignite or non-damaging elemental ailments such as Chill don't bother us anymore as we have 100% elemental ailment avoidance. We regenerate 4.4% of our life per second and leech 2.6% of our physical attack damage as life with Blood Rage on. Even without any Flasks active, we have a lot of armor on our character. We also have 3 endurance charges active from Enduring Cry, which adds another 12% of physical damage reduction to our character. Thanks to the keystone Call to Arms, we can just scream around on left mouse click on cooldown. We use a cast when damage taken setup together with Immortal Call and take up to 75% less physical damage because of the 3 endurance charges together with the 30% less elemental damage during its effect. We have 76% cold and lightning resistance thanks to Soul of Steel on the skill tree, while the Barbarism notable pushes our fire resistance even to 77%. With min-max gear we can reach more than 6000 life at level 95, which is a good amount together with all the other defenses. Now that you got a good feeling for the tankiness of the character, let's take a look at the gear and gem setups for its offense potential. I'll also provide information of how much this recommended gear costs and further improvements you could make. Please notice that prices may change and these are rough estimates at the time of making this build guide. For your orientation, look at this graph where cheap items cost a maximum of 20 Chaos Orbs and very expensive items cost more than 3 Exalted Orbs. Please check out the Path of Building link in the description under this video and look at the notes for any future changes. I played this character and made this guide during Heist League. Our main skill gem setup consists of Bladestorm linked to Impale, melee physical damage, brutality, close combat and Fortify. For even more damage you can use the awakened versions of brutality and melee physical damage, but it's rather expensive and only needed for min-maxing. We have the Bladestorm setup linked in our body armor, which is a 6-linked astral plate. This is one core item of the build, as it highly increases our damage output and clear speed, with the attacks have up to 1.5% to critical strike chance from Elder or Hunter influence, and enemies you kill explode, dealing 3% of their life as physical damage from Crusader influence. Together with these stats you want high life, resistances and armor on this item. Every other useful influence mod here is a bonus. Our movement skill setup consists of Leap Slam linked with faster attacks, and we also socket Blood Rage here for a nice damage and attack speed boost. We link these gems in one of our Paradoxica weapons, a special unique that's limited to Betrayal content. You want these weapons to have a combination of high physical damage with either increased critical strike chance or attack speed. These weapons are highly recommended and can only be topped with the rare high physical foil for a ton of currency. The Savior doesn't fit well into the gem setup of this build and doesn't feel good with Bladestorm either, especially while mapping. In our second Paradoxica we link the Aura's Dread Banner, Blood and Sand and Precision. With them we further increase our damage and reach the 100% Impale chance with our Bladestorms. Depending on the mana of your gear, precision has to be kept at low levels. We socket the Aura's Pride and Flesh and Stone together with Maim and Anomalous and Lighten in our boots. The Maim support gem increases the damage effectiveness of the Blood Stance, and all auras boost our damage significantly. This is the first item that gives us elemental ailments avoidance thanks to the Shaper influence. Otherwise, we are looking for high life, resistances and movement speed on this item. If you want to min-max, good luck trying to get the Tailwind mod from the Hunter influence on your boots too. We are not dependent on any boots enchantment, but the increased attack speed helps with clearing. We link the totems Val Ancestral Warchief and Ancestral Protector together with multiple totems and Culling Strike in our gloves. Use the totems only in boss fights and against tanky rare monsters for an extra damage boost. On our gloves we want high life and damage modifiers such as attack speed and added physical damage. Spiked gloves are the best base here and the enchantment doesn't matter. We really want an open suffix on this item to craft our second piece of gear with elemental ailment avoidance and finish it off with some resistance. In our helmet we have linked the cast when damage taken setup together with increased duration and the skill gems Immortal Call and Enduring Cry for survivability. +1 to maximum number of Bladestorms is a very nice helmet enchantment, and we need it on a minimum item level 85 Elder base to get the nearby enemies take 9% increased physical damage suffix on the item. On top of that, we are looking for high life, resistance and an open suffix for yet another elemental ailments avoidance craft at the bench. For rings we want a combination of physical attack damage or speed modifiers together with high life and resistances, and one ring with either Poacher's Mark or Assassin's Mark on hit. We also want to make sure the rings have an open prefix to craft non-channeling skills have minus to total mana cost on them at our bench. If you wanna use channeling skills in the setup like Cyclone, don't forget to change this craft to the channeling skills version. Also use catalysts on your jewelry to increase either the attack, life or resistance modifiers. The amulet should have high life, critical strike chance and critical strike multiplier together with dexterity and a resistance on it. You can save a lot of money if you look at talismans. However, the downsides are that you can't change the anointment or use catalysts on them. A costly upgrade would be to get high added physical damage to the attacks on top of it. For anointment we go with ambidexterity as a great overall damage boost for just 1 Amber, Azure and Black Oil. If you only care about increasing your single target DPS, you could use Panopticon instead that buffs your totems. Our belt is a Hunter influenced Stygian Vice to get the Overwhelm up to 15% physical damage reduction suffix on it, together with high life resistances and some crafted damage on top. Again, don't forget the catalysts. We use a Murderous Eye tool in our belt together with life, added physical damage to sword attacks and needed resistances. Just get a combination of life and 2 or 3 damage modifiers or resistances to fit the rest of your gear. In one of our jewel sockets on the tree we use a rare jewel with a combination of life, physical attack damage modifiers and again if needed resistances on it. For min-maxing you would want a lot of critical strike multiplier on your jewels. In the second jewel socket we use the unique prismatic jewel Watcher's Eye with the mod Impales you inflict last 2 additional hits while using Pride. This jewel is very expensive but buffs our single target damage by a lot. It's recommended to use the Corrupted Blood cannot be inflicted on you as a corruption implicit on one of your jewels. This brings us to the last pieces of gear, which are the flasks. No need to care about elemental ailments opens up suffix slots on them. Therefore we use a granite flask of iron skin which substantially increases the armor of our character. Even though we jump around with Sleep Slam, it's still nice having a quicksilver flask of adrenaline for extra movement speed boost. A diamond flask highly increases our damage output as a crit character, and a quartz flask makes sure we can position ourselves well in the middle of monster groups to one-shot them with a single Bladestorm. It's recommended running these flasks with curse and bleeding removal. Our last flask is a seizing divine flask of staunching, a true lifesaver in some situations. The basic playstyle of this build is to use sand stands for clearing, where you jump around with Sleep Slam into the middle of monster groups and use 1 or 2 Bladestorms until you jump away again. The storms will kill monsters behind you and this makes you rather fast. For tougher wares or for bosses, we switch to blood stands and use our Ancestral Protector and Warchief totems. If the Vaal Ancestral Warchief is ready, use them too. Make sure that both you and the enemy stand in the Bladestorms as it highly increases the DPS you do. Some high endgame bosses are very mobile and it can be frustrating fighting them with Bloodstorms, while they constantly jump out of them. For that, just carry a second sword attack skill of your choice in your inventory and switch it out quickly, for example Cyclone. It's not needed to do this, but might speed up the fight significantly. The skill tree is very straightforward and we kill all 3 bandits for 2 extra passive skill points in Act 2. On the passive skill tree we mostly pick up life and fortify effects for defense, crit chance and multiplier together with Impale and one-hand melee weapon or sword nodes for offense. Start leveling with Perforate until you swap to Bladestorm at level 28. Travel to the nodes Forceful Skewering and Swift Skewering to reach 100% Impale chance as soon as you can equip the Impale support gem at level 31. The keystone Call to Arms together with Enduring Cry basically serves as a free life flask while leveling, so just pick it up early on your way. For more tips on leveling and early character progression, please check out my build diary I made before this guide, link in the description. The Ascendancy choices make Champion a great pick for Impale characters. We start with Conqueror only to be able to pick up worthy foe afterwards, so we don't need to care about accuracy or miss our hits anymore. In Merciless Lab we pick Master of Metal to boost our Impale damage a lot. We finish our Ascendancy tree with Unstoppable Hero in Uber Lab to increase both our defense and offense. As a side note, if you manage to get a lot of accuracy on your character later on, you can also respec the Taunt nodes into Inspirational and First to Strike, Last to Fall instead. Pantheons are situational, but Soul of Rislasa for the Minor God and Soul of Lunaris or Solaris for the Major Gods are recommended for this character. That's the end of this build guide! I can highly recommend this character as it's fun to play, switching stances and watching your Bladestorms doesn't get boring, and the investment to make it into higher tier maps is low. So give it a try and tell me how you like it! If you enjoyed this build guide, please click that subscribe button. I'll continue pushing out that YouTube content. I'd also be happy to say hi to you on my Twitch stream. I'm usually live on Twitch Wednesdays to Sundays with optional YouTube days. I'm Azu and I hope to see you there on my next video here. Bye!